The morning sky above New Sol Colony burned red like blood. 3 massive alien warships hung in the air like dark metal mountains. Their shadows covered the small human settlement that had taken 20 years to build. Smoke rose from broken buildings and twisted metal where the first wave of attacks had hit. Colonel Lee Dae-ho pressed his back against the wreckage of what used to be a defense turret. Blood ran down his left arm from a piece of sharp metal that had cut deep. His military uniform was torn and dirty. Around him lay the bodies of good soldiers who would never see Earth again. The aliens called themselves the Vorthak Empire. They had come without warning 3 days ago. Their weapons were far better than anything humans had. Their armor was stronger. Their ships moved faster. Every human colony they found was destroyed completely. Dae-ho looked through his broken rifle scope at the enemy soldiers moving closer. The Vorthak were tall creatures with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They moved in perfect formation across the burning settlement. Their red eyes glowed behind dark helmets. Each one carried weapons that could cut through human armor like paper. "Sir, we are almost out of bullets," said Sergeant Park Woo-bin. He was kneeling beside 3 wounded colonists. His medical kit was nearly empty. Blood covered his hands as he tried to stop bleeding from a bad wound on a young woman's leg. Park had been a good soldier for 15 years. He had served in 3 different colonies before coming to New Sol. He had seen many battles, but never anything like this. The Vorthak did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply destroyed everything human. Lieutenant Kim So-young crawled over from behind a fallen wall. Her communication device sparked and crackled with static. "The evacuation ships got away," she said quietly. "But we lost contact with the orbital defense platform. The enemy controls the sky now." So-young was only 26 years old, but she was already one of the best tactical officers in this sector. She had graduated top of her class from the military academy on Mars. Her family had sent her to the colonies to gain experience. Now she might die here without ever seeing them again. Dae-ho counted his remaining soldiers. 12 were still able to fight. 23 were wounded but alive. The rest were gone. They had started with over 200 defenders when the attack began. "How much ammunition do we have left?" he asked. "Maybe 30 minutes of fighting if we are careful," So-young replied. She checked her own weapon. The power cell showed red, almost empty. The Vorthak had been moving slowly through the colony for the past hour. They were not in a hurry. They knew the humans could not escape. They seemed to enjoy taking their time. Sometimes they would stop to examine human technology or look through personal belongings of the colonists. Through his scope, Dae-ho watched a Vorthak commander standing on top of the colony's main administration building. The alien was bigger than the others. His armor was decorated with strange symbols that glowed with blue light. This one was clearly in charge. The commander raised one of his forearms and pointed toward the human positions. More Vorthak soldiers began moving forward. They carried heavy weapons that hummed with energy. Some pushed floating platforms loaded with explosives. "They are getting ready for the final attack," Dae-ho said. He had seen this pattern before on other worlds. The Vorthak liked to end battles with overwhelming force. They would advance all at once and destroy everything that remained. Park finished bandaging the wounded woman and moved to help an injured man who was having trouble breathing. "Sir, maybe we should try to surrender," he said quietly. "Some of these people are civilians. They do not deserve to die for a war they did not start." Dae-ho understood Park's feelings, but he knew the truth. "The Vorthak do not take prisoners, Park. We have seen what they do to human colonies. Everyone dies. Fighting or not fighting makes no difference to them." A young colonial engineer named Choi Min-ho was hiding nearby in the ruins of what used to be the power station. He had been working on the generators when the attack started. Explosions had buried him under metal and concrete. It took him 2 hours to dig his way out. Min-ho watched through a crack in the debris as more Vorthak soldiers gathered in the colony square. He counted at least 50 of them. Each one was armed with weapons that could level buildings. They moved with the confidence of creatures who had never known defeat. The engineer thought about his wife and daughter who had escaped on the first evacuation ship. At least they were safe. That was something. He pulled out a small photo from his pocket. His daughter was only 5 years old. She loved to draw pictures of flowers and butterflies. She would never see this world again. Dae-ho made a decision. He activated his emergency beacon. "All remaining units, this is Colonel Lee. We are making our final stand at Sector 7. If anyone receives this message, tell Earth that New Sol Colony fought to the end. Tell them we did not give up. The beacon would broadcast for maybe 10 minutes before the Vorthak jammed it, but that might be enough time for someone to hear. Maybe other colonies would learn from their fight. Maybe Earth would send better weapons next time. So Young checked her watch. Sir, I am reading massive energy buildup from their ships. I think they are preparing for orbital bombardment. That was the final step. The Vorthak would use their ship weapons to turn everything into melted glass and metal. There would be nothing left to show that humans had ever lived here. But then something caught Daeho's attention. A small flash of light from the hills east of the colony. Just for a moment he thought he saw metal reflecting sunlight. That was strange. Those hills were supposed to be empty. All the mining equipment had been moved to the southern region months ago. He adjusted his scope and looked more carefully at the distant ridges. There was definitely something there. Something that had not been there before the attack started. The light flashed again for just a second. The Vorthak commander began speaking in his own language. His voice was deep and harsh like grinding stone. Other aliens stopped what they were doing and listened. This was probably their victory speech. Daeho prepared his weapon for the final battle. Around him his soldiers did the same. They were scared, but they would not run. They would fight until the end because that was what soldiers did. That was what humans did. The red sky grew darker as the alien ships moved into bombardment position. Commander Velthar stood on the highest point of the human colony. His forearms spread wide as he looked down at the destruction below. The buildings were broken. Smoke rose from fires that burned across the settlement. Dead humans lay scattered like broken toys. This was how it always ended. The humans fought bravely, but they were weak. Their weapons were simple. Their armor was thin. They had no chance against the mighty Vorthak Empire. Velthar had conquered 47 worlds in his long military career. This colony was just another easy victory. The commander's armor was black with silver markings that showed his high rank. Red lights glowed along the edges where his power systems hummed with energy. His helmet had advanced sensors that could see in all directions at once. Nothing could surprise him. He activated his voice amplifier so all his soldiers could hear him clearly. The sound would carry across the entire valley. This was an important moment. His troops needed to hear the words of victory. Warriors of the Empire, Velthar began. His voice echoed off the broken buildings. Another world falls before our might. The humans fought as expected, with courage but without wisdom. They chose to resist the inevitable. Below him, 50 Vorthak soldiers stood in formation. Each one was a veteran of many battles. They had fought on ice worlds and desert planets. They had defeated species far stronger than humans. Their weapons never missed. Their armor had never been broken by human technology. Look upon this victory, the commander continued. Let it remind you why the Empire always wins. We are superior in every way. Our science is better. Our weapons are stronger. Our will to conquer cannot be broken. The soldiers raised their weapons high in salute. Energy crackled along the barrels as power cells charged to full capacity. They were ready to finish off any remaining humans who might still be hiding. Velthar paused for effect. This was his favorite part of every conquest. The moment when he could declare total victory over another inferior species. It is over, he announced. His words rang across the valley like thunder. This world belongs to the Vorthak Empire now. The echoes of his voice bounced off the hills surrounding the colony. The sound rolled across empty fields and rocky ridges before fading into silence. For a moment everything was perfectly quiet. Even the fires seemed to burn more softly. Then something impossible happened. From the eastern hills came a sound that should not exist. It was sharp and loud like breaking metal, but different. It was the sound of an old-style projectile weapon firing. Not a laser or plasma gun like humans normally used. Something much more primitive. Every Vorthak soldier turned to look toward the hills. Their sensors could not identify the source of the sound. It came from too far away. The distance was at least 2,000 meters. No human weapon could be accurate at that range. Before anyone could react, a Vorthak warrior suddenly stumbled backward. His chest armor had a perfect round hole punched through it. Green blood began flowing from the wound. He looked down in shock, then fell to the ground, dead. The other soldiers looked around in confusion. Their commander's sensors showed no enemy positions, no energy signatures, no heat sources that could indicate hidden weapons. Yet one of their best warriors was dead. Choi Min-ho watched from his hiding place in the power station ruins. He could barely believe what he had just seen. Someone had shot a Vorthak soldier from the distant hills. The distance was incredible. The accuracy was perfect. But who could make such a shot? The young engineer pressed himself deeper into the rubble as more soldiers began scanning the area with their advanced equipment. Their sensors swept back and forth looking for the hidden sniper. Red targeting beams cut through the smoke as they searched. Another shot rang out from the hills. This time a Vorthak sergeant spun around and collapsed. The bullet had found a weak spot in his neck armor. His weapon clattered to the ground as life left his body. Panic began to spread through the alien ranks. These were elite soldiers who had never known fear. They had conquered worlds and defeated armies, but now an invisible enemy was picking them off one by one. They could not see their attacker. They could not fight back. Commander Velthar activated all his sensors to maximum power. The display inside his helmet showed detailed information about everything around him. Temperature readings, movement detection, energy analysis, but the hills remained empty on his screens. A third shot echoed across the valley. Another Vorthak warrior fell with a smoking hole in his helmet. The bullet had somehow found the one small gap in his face protection. The precision was impossible. No human should be able to make shots like this. Colonel Lee Dae-ho heard the distant rifle fire from his position behind the ruined defense turret. Hope began to grow in his chest for the first time in 3 days. Someone was fighting back. Someone was hurting the enemy that had seemed unstoppable. "Did you hear that?" whispered Sergeant Park Woo-bin. He was still treating wounded colonists, but his eyes kept looking toward the hills. "Someone is shooting at them from long range." Lieutenant Kim So-young checked her tactical display. "The shots are coming from Sector 12. That is over 2 kilometers away. No standard rifle can reach that far with any accuracy." But the shots kept coming. Each one found its mark perfectly. Vorthak soldiers began taking cover behind buildings and vehicles. Their formation broke apart as they tried to protect themselves from an enemy they could not locate. The rifle fire had a strange quality to it. The sound was deeper than normal projectile weapons. It seemed to echo longer than it should. Each shot rang across the hills like a bell calling warriors to battle. Min-ho noticed something else that made no sense. The bullets were punching through Vorthak armor like it was made of paper. He had seen human weapons bounce off that same armor without leaving a mark. But these shots went straight through as if the metal was not even there. Commander Velthar tried to maintain control of his forces. "Spread out and find the shooter," he ordered. "Use heavy weapons to destroy the entire ridge if necessary." But his soldiers were rattled. They moved more carefully now. They looked over their shoulders constantly. The invisible sniper had killed 6 of their number without being detected even once. This had never happened before in the history of the Empire. The mysterious rifle fell silent for a moment. The hills looked peaceful and empty in the afternoon sunlight. But everyone knew the shooter was still out there, waiting, watching, ready to kill again. Velthar realized that something had changed in this battle. For the first time in his military career, he felt uncertain about the outcome. The humans had found a weapon that could hurt his soldiers. A weapon his sensors could not detect or understand. The war was not over after all. In the eastern hills above New Seoul Colony, a young man named Yoon Jae-sung worked the bolt action of his grandfather's rifle. The metal was warm in his hands despite the cool mountain air. Each time he pulled the bolt back and pushed it forward, a new bullet appeared in the chamber. He did not understand how this was possible. Jae-sung was 28 years old and had lived in these hills his whole life. His family had been among the first Korean settlers to arrive on this world. They had built a small farm in the high country where the soil was rich and the water ran clean from mountain springs. The rifle had belonged to his grandfather, Yoon Tae-min, who had died 5 years ago. The old man had brought it with him from Earth when the family first came to the colony. He had always claimed it was special, but Jae-sung had never believed the stories. According to family legend, the rifle had been touched by falling stars during the great meteor shower of 1894 on Earth. Tae-min said his own grandfather had been hunting in the mountains of Korea when strange lights filled the sky. The rifle had begun to glow with blue fire that night and had never been the same since. Jae-sung had always thought these were just old man's tales meant to entertain children. The rifle looked ordinary enough. It was made of dark wood and black metal. The design was simple and old-fashioned. Nothing about it seemed magical or special. But when the Vorthak ships had appeared 3 days ago, everything changed. The rifle had started glowing with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. At first, Jae-sung thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. But the glow got stronger as the alien warships came closer to the colony. When the invasion began, Jae-sung had tried to reach the colony to help defend it. But Vorthak forces had blocked all the roads. Flying patrols swept the valleys looking for fleeing humans. He had been forced to retreat back to his family's homestead high in the mountains. That was when desperation made him remember his grandfather's stories. The old rifle was locked in a metal case in the basement of the farmhouse. Taemin had always said it should only be used when humanity faced its greatest danger. Now as Jae-sung looked through the rifle's simple iron sights, he could see things that should be impossible. The Vorthak soldiers in the colony below appeared crystal clear despite the distance of over 2 kilometers. He could see the weak spots in their armor. He could predict where they would move next. Each shot felt guided by something beyond his own skill. The rifle seemed to know exactly where to aim. The bullets never missed their targets. They punched through advanced alien armor like it was made of thin cloth instead of hardened metal. The weapon felt alive in his hands. Sometimes he could swear it was whispering to him in a language he did not understand but somehow knew. The words spoke of ancient wars fought between the stars, of weapons hidden across many worlds waiting for worthy hands to wield them. Through the scope, Jae-sung watched Commander Velthar trying to organize his scattered forces. The alien leader was shouting orders, but his soldiers were clearly shaken. They had never faced an enemy they could not see or understand. Jae-sung took careful aim at a Vorthak heavy weapons specialist, who was setting up equipment that looked like it could destroy buildings. The rifle's crosshairs settled on a small gap in the alien's shoulder armor. He squeezed the trigger gently. The shot rang out across the hills with that strange, deep tone that seemed to echo longer than normal sound waves should. The heavy weapons specialist jerked backward and fell. His equipment exploded in a shower of sparks and green flame. Down in the colony, Dr. Han Soo-jin was treating wounded colonists in a hidden medical bunker beneath the old school building. She had been the colony's chief medical officer for 6 years. Her equipment included advanced scanners that could detect many different types of energy. As she worked on a man with severe burns from alien weapons, her scanners began showing readings that made no sense. Energy patterns were appearing that did not match any known human or Vorthak technology. The readings pulsed in perfect time with the distant rifle shots. Soo-jin had studied alien artifacts before coming to the colonies. She had written research papers on xenoarchaeology and ancient civilizations. The energy signatures her equipment was detecting reminded her of theoretical models she had seen in scientific journals. According to the papers, some scientists believed that very advanced alien races might have used quantum field manipulation to enhance primitive weapons. The theory was that certain materials could be programmed at a molecular level to channel exotic energy forms, but those were just theories. No one had ever found actual examples of such technology, yet her scanners were clearly detecting quantum resonance patterns that suggested something far beyond current human science was at work. Each time the mysterious rifle fired, the energy readings spiked dramatically. The patterns were complex and organized like a sophisticated computer program. Whatever was happening in those hills involved technology that humanity did not yet understand. Jae-sung continued his methodical shooting. He had killed 12 Vorthak soldiers and destroyed 3 pieces of heavy equipment. Each shot felt easier than the last. The rifle seemed to be teaching him things about marksmanship that no human instructor ever could. He began to understand wind patterns in ways he never had before. He could predict exactly how gravity would affect a bullet's path over long distances. Most strangely, he could somehow sense the exact moment when his targets would move into perfect position. The blue glow around the rifle grew brighter as the afternoon wore on. Sometimes Jae-sung thought he could see symbols carved into the metal that had not been there before. They looked like writing, but not from any human language he knew. Commander Velthar ordered his remaining soldiers to take heavy cover and wait for reinforcements from the orbiting warships. He had lost 15 elite warriors to an enemy that did not seem to exist. His sensors still showed nothing in the eastern hills except rocks and trees, but Jae-sung was far from finished. The rifle had plenty more bullets to fire, and many more Vorthak soldiers were still moving through the colony below. Each shot would bring the aliens closer to understanding that they had awakened something they were not prepared to face. something that had been waiting in these hills for over a century. Something that remembered older wars and ancient enemies. Something that had chosen this moment and this human to make its presence known to the galaxy once again. The hunt was just beginning. Commander Velthar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The green dots that represented his soldiers kept disappearing one by one. Each time the mysterious rifle fired from the hills, another warrior died. 22 of his best troops were gone now. This had never happened in the long history of the Vorthak Empire. The alien commander's confidence was cracking like broken glass. His hands shook slightly as he tried to contact the orbital fleet. "This is ground command," he said into his communication device. "I need immediate support. We are under attack by an unknown weapon system." The voice that answered from space was cold and impatient. "Explain the delay, Commander. Your reports indicated complete victory over the human colony." Velthar looked around at his scattered forces. Vorthak soldiers who had conquered worlds were now hiding behind buildings like frightened children. "We have encountered unexpected resistance. The humans possess a weapon that can penetrate our armor at extreme range." There was a long pause before the fleet commander responded. "That is impossible. Human technology is primitive. Their weapons cannot harm our battle armor." Another shot echoed from the eastern hills. A Vorthak communications officer fell to the ground with a smoking hole in his chest plate. His equipment sparked and went dead. The precision was perfect. "The power was overwhelming. 23 dead now," Velthar reported quietly. He had been a warrior for 40 years. He had seen many battles on many worlds, but he had never felt fear like this before. An invisible enemy was hunting his soldiers like animals. Down in the colony ruins, Colonel Lee Daeho watched the chaos spreading through the Vorthak ranks. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt hope growing in his chest. The aliens were no longer advancing. They were taking cover and looking over their shoulders. "The sniper is changing everything," said Lieutenant Kim So-young. She was monitoring enemy communications on captured equipment. Their commander sounds worried. "They are calling for help from their ships." Sergeant Park Woo-bin finished treating another wounded colonist and crawled over to where Daeho was observing the enemy. "Sir, I think we should try to coordinate with whoever is shooting from the hills. Maybe we can launch a counterattack while they are confused." Daeho nodded slowly. The thought had occurred to him too. But how could they contact a sniper who was over 2 kilometers away? Their communications equipment was damaged and the Vorthak were jamming most frequencies. Then something strange began to happen. The surviving human colonists started reporting that their own weapons were working better. Private Han Sung-min had been trying to repair his damaged rifle when it suddenly began glowing with faint blue light. When he test-fired it, the beam was brighter and more focused than before. Communications specialist Kwan Hyo-jin managed to get her long-range transmitter working again. She sent out emergency signals to other human settlements across the planet. "This is New Sol Colony," she broadcast. "We are under attack but have encountered something that is turning the tide. Unknown friendly forces are engaging the enemy with extreme effectiveness." The response came faster than expected. Other colonies across the planet began reporting similar events. Settlement after settlement sent messages about mysterious energy signatures and impossible weapons appearing, just when they needed them most. From Haven Valley, colony came reports of an ancient sword that had begun glowing and could cut through Vorthak armor like butter. Red Rock Mining Station reported that their old Earth-made mining explosives were suddenly 10 times more powerful than normal. Everywhere, humans were finding that their simple weapons were becoming deadly effective against alien technology. Dr. Han Soo-jin continued monitoring the strange energy patterns from her hidden medical bunker. Her equipment showed that the quantum field disturbances were spreading outward from the eastern hills like ripples in a pond. Whatever was happening up there was affecting the entire region. "The energy is not just coming from one source," she reported to Daeho over a secured channel. "It is awakening something in all our weapons. Human technology is being enhanced by an unknown force." In the hills, Yoon Jae-sung felt the rifle teaching him things he had never learned. Each shot revealed new knowledge about warfare and marksmanship. He understood trajectory calculations that would normally require advanced computers. He could predict enemy movements with supernatural accuracy. The weapon seemed to be connected to something much larger than itself. Through the rifle, Jae-sung sensed other awakening artifacts across the planet. Ancient tools that had been sleeping for centuries were coming to life. Humanity was being given weapons they would need for a war they did not yet understand. Young Park Jin-woo had lost his entire family in the first day of the Vorthak attack. His parents and sister had been killed when alien bombers destroyed the residential district. Since then, he had been hiding in the ruins, consumed by grief and rage. But now something was different. As Jin-woo moved through the wreckage of his neighborhood, he found himself stepping more quietly than he ever had before. His movements were becoming fluid and precise. He could sense Vorthak patrols before they appeared around corners. When he picked up a broken piece of metal to use as a weapon, it felt perfectly balanced in his hand. His aim was suddenly perfect. His reflexes were faster than human normal. It was as if the same force that guided the mysterious rifle was awakening abilities in him that had always been there waiting. Other survivors reported similar experiences. Elderly farmer Kim Del-soo discovered he could throw stones with deadly accuracy over impossible distances. Teenage mechanic Lee Min-jung found that she could sabotage Vorthak equipment just by touching it with her bare hands. The aliens began to realize they were facing something beyond normal human resistance. Their advanced sensors detected energy patterns they had never encountered before. Ancient technology was awakening across the entire planet. Commander Velthar received urgent reports from other Vorthak forces planet-wide. Every human settlement was showing increased resistance. Weapons that should have been harmless were suddenly cutting through battle armor. Humans were displaying abilities that defied explanation. "This is not possible," he said to his second-in-command. "Humans are a primitive species. They have no access to advanced weapons technology." But the evidence was undeniable. His forces were being pushed back across multiple fronts. The easy conquest had become a nightmare. Something ancient and powerful was awakening to defend humanity. In the hills, the rifle pulsed with brighter blue light as afternoon turned toward evening. Jae-sung understood now that his weapon was just the beginning. Across this world, and maybe across all human space, sleeping guardians were opening their eyes. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just getting started. Dr. Han Soo-jin worked frantically at her scanner equipment in the underground medical bunker. The energy readings were becoming stronger every hour. What had started as small quantum fluctuations was now showing patterns that made her hands shake as she recorded the data. She had spent 6 years studying alien artifacts at the university on Mars before coming to New Sol Colony. Her doctoral research had focused on theoretical xenoarchaeology. She had written papers about ancient civilizations that might have existed millions of years ago. But this was not theory anymore. The scanner displayed energy signatures that matched almost perfectly with models she had seen in classified research documents. According to those papers, certain prehistoric races might have developed technology that could enhance primitive weapons using quantum field manipulation. The theory suggested these ancient beings could program matter itself at the molecular level. "This cannot be happening," Soo-jin whispered to herself as she checked the readings for the 10th time. But the data was clear. The rifle in the eastern hills was emitting quantum resonance patterns that suggested technology far beyond anything humans or even the Vorthak possessed. She opened her research files on her tablet computer. Most of the information was theoretical, but one paper caught her attention. It had been written by Professor Nam Ki-jun at the Mars Archaeological Institute. The title was Evidence for Prehistoric Intervention in Human Development. According to the paper, there were traces of extremely advanced technology buried in archaeological sites across human space. Strange metal fragments that could not be analyzed, stone carvings that showed mathematical equations humans had only recently discovered, genetic markers in human DNA that suggested outside influence. The paper had been largely ignored by the scientific community. Most researchers thought Ki-jun was chasing fantasy theories. But now, as Soo-jin looked at her scanner readings, she began to think the professor might have been right about everything. In the eastern hills, Yoon Jae-sung continued firing his grandfather's rifle at the Vorthak forces below. But something was changing in his mind with each shot. Visions were flooding his consciousness like memories that did not belong to him. He saw vast space battles fought between stars he did not recognize. Ancient warships larger than cities clashed in the darkness between galaxies. Creatures of incredible intelligence wielded weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. The war had raged for millions of years. Through the rifle's consciousness, Jae-sung learned about a race called the Kethmori. They had been the guardians of this part of the galaxy long before humans evolved on Earth. They had fought against an enemy known as the Vorthak Empire for countless generations. But the Keth-Mori had learned something terrible during their long war. The Vorthak were not the real threat. They were running from something worse. Something that devoured entire civilizations and left nothing but empty space behind. The Void Seekers were coming from beyond the galactic rim. The ancient Guardians had realized they could not win the war through force alone. Instead, they had chosen a different path. They had seeded their weapons across thousands of worlds. They had searched for species with the potential to become the next generation of galactic protectors. Humanity had been one of those chosen species. The Keth-Mori had visited Earth many times over the millennia. They had left their weapons hidden among human populations. They had made small changes to human genetics to prepare for the day when their tools would be needed. The rifle showed Jae-sung the truth about his family's weapon. It was not just enhanced by alien technology. It was alien technology. The Keth-Mori had given it to his ancestors during the meteor shower of 1894. That had been no natural event. It had been a Keth-Mori supply mission preparing Earth for the war that was coming. Across the galaxy, other weapons were awakening as the Vorthak Empire encountered human colonies. The invasion had triggered responses that had been programmed into the artifacts centuries ago. Humanity's expansion into space had activated ancient protocols designed to prepare them for their destiny. Captain Oh Dong-wook was leading a counterattack against confused Vorthak forces in the southern part of New Seoul Colony. He had been amazed to discover that his soldiers were fighting with abilities they had never possessed before. Their aim was perfect. Their movements were coordinated without any verbal communication. Private Yang Tae-hyun could somehow sense exactly where enemy soldiers were hiding, even through thick walls. Corporal Bae Sung-ho found that his rifle could penetrate Vorthak armor that should have been impossible to damage. The entire squad was operating like a single organism with shared consciousness. "Sir, this does not make sense," Yang reported over the communication system. "I know exactly where every enemy soldier is located within 100 meters. I can predict their movements before they make them." Dong-wook was experiencing the same enhanced abilities. He understood battlefield tactics that he had never studied. Strategic knowledge was flowing into his mind from some unknown source. "Something is teaching us how to fight this war," he replied. "Something that knows more about the Vorthak than we do." The rifle in the hills pulsed with brighter light as more information flowed into Jae-sung's consciousness. He learned that the Keth-Mori had not simply disappeared from the galaxy. They had transcended physical existence to become something greater. They existed now as pure consciousness spread across quantum fields that connected all their weapons. When humans picked up Keth-Mori artifacts, they were connecting to this ancient network of knowledge and experience. Every rifle shot, every enhanced sword strike, every impossible feat of marksmanship was guided by the accumulated wisdom of a race that had fought galactic wars for millions of years. But the revelation came with a terrible responsibility. The Keth-Mori had not just given humanity weapons to fight the Vorthak Empire. They had chosen humans to become the next guardians of the galaxy against the approaching darkness of the Void Seekers. Professor Nam Ki-jun at the Mars Archaeological Institute was studying Keth-Mori ruins that had been mistaken for natural rock formations for decades. His scanners were detecting massive energy buildups in artifacts across human space. Ancient weapons were awakening on dozens of worlds simultaneously. "The activation pattern is spreading faster than light speed," he reported to his research team. "Whatever is triggering this awakening is using quantum entanglement to coordinate responses across the entire galaxy. This suggests a level of technology that approaches godlike capabilities." The professor realized that humanity was about to discover they were part of something much larger than they had ever imagined. The war with the Vorthak Empire was just the beginning. A greater conflict was coming that would determine the fate of all intelligent life in the galaxy. In the hills above New Seoul Colony, Yoon Jae-sung understood his true purpose now. The rifle had chosen him not just to defend one human colony, but to help prepare his entire species for their destiny as galactic guardians. The ancient war was beginning again, and this time humans would fight alongside the eternal consciousness of the Keth-Mori. The revelation was complete. Now the real battle could begin. Through the consciousness of his grandfather's rifle, Yoon Jae-sung saw visions of the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. The images flowed into his mind like water filling an empty cup. Stars burned brighter then. Entire civilizations flourished on worlds that were now nothing but dust and empty space. The Keth-Mori had been the greatest of all ancient races. They built cities that floated between stars, Their ships could travel from one end of the galaxy to the other in moments. They had achieved perfect harmony between technology and nature. War was unknown among their people for over 1,000,000 years, but peace could not last forever. From the dark space beyond the galactic rim came something that consumed everything in its path. The Void Seekers were not alive in any way that other species could understand. They were hunger given form. They devoured matter and energy and consciousness itself, leaving behind only empty nothingness. The first worlds to fall sent out desperate calls for help before their signals went silent forever. The Kethmori responded with their great fleet. They had never fought a war, but they would not let innocent civilizations be destroyed without resistance. Jae-sung watched through ancient eyes as the first battles raged in the outer spiral arms. The Kethmori ships were beautiful works of art that moved like living creatures through space. Their weapons channeled the power of stars themselves. But the Void Seekers were beyond counting, and they felt no fear or pain. The war lasted for thousands of years. Entire regions of the galaxy became battlefields where reality itself was torn apart by forces too powerful for normal space to contain. The Kethmori fought bravely, but they were slowly being pushed back toward the galactic core. That was when they discovered the Vorthak Empire. These gray-skinned warriors had been expanding across their sector for centuries. They conquered world after world with ruthless efficiency. But they were not evil in the way the Void Seekers were evil. They were simply doing what they believed was necessary for survival. The Kethmori learned the terrible truth. The Vorthak Empire was not expanding for conquest or glory. They were running. Their homeworld had been in the path of the approaching Void Seekers. They had been forced to become conquerors or face complete extinction. A great debate raged among the Kethmori councils. Some wanted to destroy the Vorthak Empire for their crimes against innocent species. Others believed they should be allies against the greater threat. The arguments continued for decades while the Void Seekers grew closer to the galactic core. Finally, the wisest among the Kethmori proposed a different solution. They could not win this war through military force alone. The enemy was too vast and too alien. Instead, they would prepare for a longer struggle that might take millions of years to complete. The Kethmori began the Great Seeding. They scattered their weapons and technology across thousands of worlds. They searched for species that showed the potential to become great warriors and protectors. They made careful changes to genetics and culture that would prepare these races for their eventual destiny. Humanity was discovered during this time. The primitive humans on Earth showed remarkable adaptability and courage. They were still using stone tools, but they had something the Kethmori recognized as essential for galactic guardians. They never gave up fighting even when victory seemed impossible. The ancient guardians visited Earth many times over the millennia. They left weapons hidden among human populations. They made small genetic modifications that would activate when the time was right. They taught early human skills that would be passed down through generations. The meteor shower of 1894 had been one of these visits. Kethmori ships had distributed artifacts across Earth while disguised as natural phenomena. Jae-sung's family had been chosen to guard one of these weapons until humanity was ready for the greater war. But the Kethmori plan required a final sacrifice. To properly guide their chosen species, they would need to transcend physical existence. One by one, the ancient guardians uploaded their consciousness into quantum fields that connected all their weapons across the galaxy. Jae-sung felt tears running down his face as he experienced the last days of the Kethmori civilization. They faced extinction not from the Void Seekers, but from their own choice to become something greater. Their bodies dissolved into pure energy as their minds joined the eternal network that would guide future guardians. The rifle showed him other human colonies across space where similar awakenings were taking place. On Titan Station, an ancient hammer could crush Vorthak battle armor with single blows. On Europa Colony, a bow that never missed was turning the tide of battle. On Ganymede Base, a sword that cut through any material was creating legends among the defenders. Each weapon carried the consciousness of Kethmori warriors who had fought the ancient war. Each human who picked up these artifacts gained access to millions of years of military knowledge and experience. Humanity was becoming something new, something that could stand against the returning darkness. Commander Velthar received an urgent communication from the Vorthak High Command on the orbital flagship. The voice that spoke was ancient and tired. It belonged to Supreme War Leader Kethval, who had commanded Vorthak forces for over 2 centuries. "Commander, you are to cease all offensive operations immediately," came the order. Withdraw your forces to defensive positions and prepare for negotiation with the human leadership. Velthar could not believe what he was hearing. Supreme Leader, the humans are using unknown weapons against us, but they are still inferior. We can defeat them with reinforcements from the fleet. You do not understand the situation, Commander. Our deep space sensors have detected movement in the void beyond the galactic rim. The ancient enemy is returning. The humans are not our opponents anymore. They are our only hope for survival. The communication ended, leaving Velthar staring at his tactical display in shock. In over 40 years of military service, he had never heard fear in a Supreme War leader's voice. But now he understood. The Vorthak Empire had been running from something for so long they had forgotten why the war started. Dr. Han Soo-jin detected massive energy surges from space as Vorthak warships began powering down their weapon systems. Her scanners showed that similar events were happening across human space. The invasion was ending not in victory or defeat, but in something completely unexpected. Professor Nam Ki-jun at Mars received data from observation posts at the edge of the solar system. Something vast was moving in the empty space between galaxies, something that blocked starlight as it passed. The Void Seekers were returning just as the ancient prophecies had warned. In the hills above New Sol Colony, Jae-sung understood that his war was just beginning. The rifle pulsed with renewed energy as it connected to awakening weapons across the galaxy. Humanity had been chosen to inherit the greatest responsibility in the universe. They would become the new guardians against the darkness that consumed worlds.